This is my third response to various smears and falsehoods put against the Australia First Party by the so-called Australian Party for Freedom. Mr. Nic Folkes and his group have uploaded a certain video where they're making suggestions that Australia First is either neo-Nazi or, an amazing term, Islamo-Nazi. As is a matter for the record, I am in fact an academic expert on the subject of neo-Nazis. But tonight we're simply going to talk about neo-Nazis in practice in Australia. Before I do, I need to mention to you what this particular video is about. It's really about the Penrith People's Movement opposed to the two mosques that would be built in Kemps Creek. It's about the People's Patriotic Movement and what's developing into a people's anti-immigration movement. As I've said elsewhere, these movements are now coming into contradiction against the Liberal Party-dominated Protect Penrith Action Group and related forces who are trying to restrain the people's struggle and keep it only inside a very narrow anti-Islamic focus. I want to explain to you concerning a person who has popped up in our videos called Tyler Winchester. Mr. Winchester was actually known to Australia First, known in a number of contexts, until Mr. Winchester announced that in fact he was a neo-Nazi, and he went on to found this group called Squadron 88. But on a certain day in November last year, Mr. Winchester contacted me and he suggested he'd like to speak to me. It seemed to me that it might be that he wanted a way out of this dead end and deadbeat politics. But no sooner had he arrived on my premises to talk to me, I found out that was not the case at all. He launched into, almost immediately, a demand that I assist him in what appeared to me to be a criminal conspiracy. He wanted me to assist him in obtaining the addresses, home addresses, of a number of Penrith councillors. These councillors were Michelle Tormey, John Thane and Jim Atkin. He said to me that a plan had come into being to damage the homes and property of these councillors, and that this would be a signal, if you like, to the Penrith people of the need to take stronger measures against the supporters of the mosques. Anyone who knows me knows that I have no little legal knowledge. Almost immediately I thought to myself, this man is attempting to entrap me, where's the tape recorder? Needless to say, I didn't agree. I would not have agreed, but I certainly didn't agree. Once you agree to a proposition put to you to break the law, you've actually entered into a criminal conspiracy. I feigned that I might in some manner be interested in his idea and let him go. I found out a little while later that in pursuit of his conspiracy, he had purchased walkie-talkies and arranged for motor vehicle transport and so on to carry out these offences. I brushed him off in another phone call that I could be of no assistance to him. I later found out that this conspiracy had in some way or other collapsed or had been discontinued. Was this conspiracy serious? In other words, did he actually intend to carry it out? Or was it perhaps an attempt to entrap a number of local youth, or even members of Australia First, or even myself, in discussing a criminal conspiracy? Quite frankly, I don't know. All I know is that the matter never went ahead. If it was real, and there was a real intention to carry this thing out, would it have served the People's Patriotic Movement in Penrith? How could it have served the People's Patriotic Movement in Penrith? Well, quite frankly, it could not. Flash forward a little bit. It's around about the 15th of January this year. I was in attendance at Penrith Railway Station when a number of persons connected to this Squadron 88 appeared to assemble. I actually commenced a conversation with our friend Tyler Winchester. I'm happy to report that this is a voice recording of the conversation with Tyler Winchester. I'm also happy to report that this is a transcript of the conversation. During this conversation, I put to Mr. Winchester that in the time that I had known him in any way personally, it seemed that he was always trying to involve me and other persons in criminal offences. I listed 2 other matters. On the first one, he said no, it wasn't him, it was them who suggested that this offence be carried out, a very serious offence I'd add. I suggested that yes, they thought that you were joking, but now I'm not exactly so sure, but they said it was you who proposed it. I then said that somewhere outside of Sydney, the subject of an explosive device had been discussed. Mr. Winchester said that no, that wasn't him, that was someone else who suggested that to him. To which I replied, quite funny, he says that you suggested it to him. There was some other conversation. What was very clear to me in this conversation with Mr. Winchester is that he had been proposing offences to a number of people in the very broad patriotic movement for a long time. I'd now like to bring you forward again to March 2015. I've mentioned in these videos a Mr. Howard Crawford, who I say is a prominent Liberal organiser in far western Sydney, working with this so-called amorphous right bloc, or whatever it is that he wants to call it, to oppose the mosques and be patriotic, he says. Mr. Crawford will most assuredly deny the conversation that I will now impute. And I make this point that it is only my word that this conversation ever took place. But for the record, I am prepared to affirm it somewhere else. During this conversation that I impute to Mr. Crawford, I deliberately said to him, I think it's rather dangerous for you to be hanging around this Squadron 88. I've seen you with them. He acknowledged it. I said to him, by producing a note folder, and I very ostentatiously wrote on that note folder a word, B-O-M-B, bomb. I said, it seems that this matter has been discussed somewhere outside of Sydney. Mr. Crawford waved it away, and I said, no, it's nothing. It was clear from the manner, I say, that he was aware that this matter had been in some manner or other discussed. Now, I don't believe necessarily that there was any plan to plant an explosive device, but there had certainly been a discussion about it. Whether or not Mr. Crawford would like to shed more illumination on this matter or not, well, I can't say. But I am quite prepared to make the relevant statement elsewhere, should it be requested. It seems to me that ever since this Squadron 88 came on the scene in far western Sydney, that it certainly hasn't been, if you like, connected to the genuine nationalist movement. Quite the contrary. Its connections have always seemed to be back to either the Liberal Party or Mr. Folkes. In other videos, I have said that the connections are multi-layered. There is the matter of the residential accommodation of the leader, Mr. Winchester, who lives in a house owned by a Party for Freedom member, rent-free, or at least rent-free as far as I knew until some time ago. There are the Facebook contacts between Mr. Folkes and Tyler Winchester, including Mr. Winchester writing words on Mr. Folkes' Facebook page, seemingly in defence of him against challenges from me. There is, of course, the matter of certain young Liberals who have been known to attend this residence for meetings, little gatherings of Squadron 88. Some names are in fact available to me. Mr Crawford has also attended those meetings, and there is the matter of the personal contact between Mr Folkes and Mr Crawford, which is well known, and Mr Crawford's contact with Squadron 88. I believe that something was discussed in Penrith, something that concerned attacks on the homes of Penrith councillors. I believe that these discussions could not remotely in a million years have served the Penrith people's patriotic movement. Whatever they were for, whatever their actual purpose is, I'm a person schooled in the discussion of those sort of rather obtuse matters, but it's not for me tonight to give to you a reason. But it is certainly something that should in fact be the matter of a proper police investigation to determine whether or not this actually occurred and what the purpose of it was. Speaking for myself, I'm not in political agreement with the councillors named, and as I understand it, those councillors have always been in favour of these mosques being built in Kemps Creek. They should not be built. However, attacking the homes of certain councillors would not have been the way forward for this movement. I believe that there should be an investigation, a proper one, into the activities of so-called neo-Nazis. When this investigation is carried out, it won't be Australia First which is implicated in their activities. Quite the contrary. Thank you.